Good evening, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhanshu Shukla, coming up in the next hour. Captain Subhanshu Shukla creates history, becomes second Indian in space, steers the Axiom-4 mission to International Space Station.
What a ride! 40 साल बाद हम वापस अंतरिक्ष में पहुंच गए हैं और कमाल की राइड थी.
Donald Trump reiterates US strikes obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities, dismisses reports casting doubts over impact of the strikes. NATO allies agree to 5% defense spending target. Trump calls the Hague summit a monumental success for the US, says America will equip members with best ammunition. India's Union Cabinet adopts resolution marking 50 years since emergency, honours individuals who opposed the 1975 crackdown on democracy. It has been a historic day for India's space adventure. Indian astronaut Subhanshu Shukla successfully took off for Axiom-4 mission on board SpaceX Dragon spacecraft on Wednesday. He is the first Indian in over 4 decades to be in space after Rakesh Sharma. The next report explores India's giant leap in space.
Yet another cosmic leap for India. Indian Air Force Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla has scripted history with the launch of Axiom Mission 4. A US commercial mission carrying astronauts from India, Poland and Hungary lifted off to the International Space Station on Wednesday, taking people from these countries to space for the first time in decades. The Axiom Mission 4 or AX4 launched from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 6:31 GMT with a brand new SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule riding atop a Falcon 9 rocket. Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, an Indian Air Force pilot who is the mission pilot, is India's second astronaut going into space, 4 decades after Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma made history in 1984. Sharma, the 39-year-old Indian Air Force fighter pilot, was chosen by ISRO as the prime astronaut for this historic flight. Soon after the Axiom-4 mission successfully entered Earth's orbit on Wednesday, Indian astronaut Subhanshu Shukla shared his experience.
नमस्कार मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों. What a ride! 40 साल बाद हम वापस अंतरिक्ष में पहुंच गए हैं और कमाल की राइड थी. और मेरे कंधे पे मेरे साथ मेरा तिरंगा है जो मुझे बता रहा है कि नहीं हूँ, मैं आप सबके साथ हूँ. ये मेरी इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन तक की जर्नी की शुरुआत नहीं है, ये भारत के ह्यूमन स्पेस प्रोग्राम की शुरुआत है. और मैं चाहता हूं कि आप सभी देशवासी इस यात्रा का हिस्सा बने. आपका भी सीना जैसे चौड़ा होना चाहिए, आप भी उतना ही एक्साइटमेंट दिखाइए. आइए हम सब मिलकर भारत के इस ह्यूमन स्पेस प्रोग्राम की जर्नी की शुरुआत करें. धन्यवाद. जय हिंद, जय भारत.
Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla's parents were extremely elated and celebrated the momentous occasion.
अनुभव तो बहुत बढ़िया है, कहें और क्या कहें क्या ना कहें तो सब आप लोग देख ही रहे हो. अनुभव की कोई ज़्यादा इमोशनल हो गए थे पर अब ठीक है.
President of India Draupadi Murmu congratulated Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla on the successful feat of Axiom-4 mission. On social media X, the President stated, and I quote, "As Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla creates a new milestone in space for India, the whole nation is excited and proud of an Indian's journey into the stars. My best wishes for the success of this mission." Taking to X, PM Narendra Modi praised the successful launch of the mission. The Indian astronaut Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla is on the way to become the first Indian to go to International Space Station. He carries with him the wishes, hopes and aspirations of 1.4 billion Indians. Wish him and other astronauts all the success. India's cabinet also lauded the successful launch of Axiom-4 mission.
We welcome the successful launch of the space mission carrying astronauts from India, Hungary, Poland and the US. the Indian astronaut group captain Shubhanshu Shukla is on the way to become the first Indian to go to International Space Station.
This is a moment where India has come of age. India is today a frontline nation, and it is, I would say, heralds the ascent of India to that pedestal of Viksit Bharat.
Once they reach the ISS on Thursday, the astronauts will spend about 2 weeks on the space station, where they will conduct microgravity research, technology demonstrations, and outreach events. Bureau Report, DD India.
And talk about this exciting space mission. Joining me is retired Lieutenant General Anil Bhatt, Director General, Indian Space Association. General Bhatt, good evening and welcome to DD India. Second time in 40 years, an Indian pilot successfully launches into space. How does the Axiom mission mark a historic milestone for India's space adventure?
Definitely. Not only a milestone, but also a stepping stone. And I'll try to explain that. Milestone because, yes, after 41 years, again an Indian is going, and there is the first Indian going to the Indian Space Station. And a stepping stone because it is our way which we aspire to go to the moon by 2040. And that would start with Gaganyaan mission, which would be in the next 2 years, where experience of Subhanshu Shukla will be a great asset to us. And thereafter, of course, the Bharati Antariksh Station from 2028 to 35 and finally to the moon.
Right. Could you elaborate on that point about stepping stones, especially for the Gaganyaan mission? The kind of physical, mental experience of working with machines in the space, how will that come invaluably handy in the upcoming missions for Captain Shukla and others?
So, as you are aware, Captain Shukla was part of the astronauts we were preparing for Gaganyaan. And then this window came, which has been utilized. But the basic issue is when any nation, spacefaring nation, transforms from sending satellites, sending missions to the moon, to Mars or whatever, and the moon, to sending human beings, there is a quantum change. And the quantum change is because this requires human safety standards. You have to create an environment in space for human beings to be safe and to be able to survive there. And for this, one of our astronauts getting an experience to go to the International Space Station, stay there for 14 days, is a hands-down experience into what space would be. And his inputs coming back to ISRO and Gaganyaan would be a great help.
Right. And so there's a great deal of curiosity around this mission as well. We understand Captain Shukla is the pilot of the spacecraft. For a layperson to understand, if you could give us some insight as to how is it different flying an he is a fighter pilot, flying an aircraft in the Earth's atmosphere and in the space?
Well, that's what they tell me, that they are two different worlds. As it is, to be a pilot and a pilot of standard of Subhanshu Shukla, they are the best. Test pilot is a man who can fly any aircraft given to him. Even an aircraft which is a prototype is flown by a test pilot. It tests all his abilities of training as well as his instincts. But coming to space, space is a different world. Here is where different strengths of a human being come into light. And those strengths are his psychological, his physiological abilities to be able to sustain this very difficult environment of enclosed space, of zero gravity, of all it has the impact on the human body and the human mind. And that is why we do select, and not we, the world selects the best and traditionally the pilots to be able to become astronauts. They are the best of the bestest.
And how crucial are going to be the next steps? We understand that Captain Shukla is taking the spacecraft towards the International Space Station. There is going to be docking and then staying for about 14 days on the International Space Station and then returning back to Earth.
Yeah. So docking itself is a very complex thing, because what you are doing is the spacecraft which has taken off from Earth has to go into the orbit where the International Space Station is. And I believe for docking on the side which they are doing, it is from the front side. It goes ahead of the International Space Station, then slowly slows down and nearly at zero speed meets and gets in contact with where it has to dock. And then the complex procedure of dock. Of course, most of it is pre-programmed and done by computers, but the human oversight also is there. It's a complex thing, but it has been done for so many years, and we will see one of this happening tomorrow at about 4:30.
Right, and this mission also marks significant cooperation between international partners. This is US mission, you have crew members led by India, Poland and Hungary.
So, traditionally, that is one thing great about the International Space Station. It has been a rallying point of cooperation. At the peak of it, between Russia, USSR and America, and now between Russia and America. It is the only place where they operate together, they work together for the furtherance of science for mankind.
And so what can you tell us about
the mission?
Right.
We have Hungary and Poland also.
Right. And what can you tell us about the particular experiments and the time that the crew members, including Captain Shukla, when they spend time, 14 days, at the International Space Station, what are they going to do and achieve?
So what basically in the International Space Station, all experiments are done in microgravity. And many successful medical experiments, medicines in the past have been made here. This time there are 60 experiments of 31 countries, which these 4 astronauts will be carrying out in the 14 days. And out of them, 7 of them are by Indian scientific institutions, more on biology or agriculture, like algae and other things, and even on medical, where muscle atrophy is being studied. And 7 of these specific experiments are from India, which Group Captain Subhanshu Shukla would be monitoring and doing the whole experiment.
Right, and finally, sir, we remember Indian cosmonaut Rakesh Sharma's mission-inspired generations of space enthusiasts. Do you see a similar moment really in play with Captain Shukla?
Oh yes, definitely. Incidentally, Mr. Rakesh Sharma went in 1984. He excited generations of people, including me. And now this young man who was born in 1985, 1 year after Rakesh Sharma had gone up into space, is going to be the heartthrob of generations to come.
Right, on that note, General Bhatt, thank you very much for joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. Iran eases internet curbs after ceasefire with Israel. 10 injured with gunshot wounds in Kenya protests. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhanshu Ghosh. Talking to media persons at The Hague, US President Donald Trump touched various issues ranging from US strikes in Iran to increase in defense spending of the NATO allies. Trump said the US precision strikes on Iran nuclear facility paved the way for peace with historic ceasefire agreement between Iran and Israel.
As you know, last weekend the United States successfully carried out a massive precision strike on Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities, and it was very, very successful. It was called obliteration. No other military on earth could have done it, and now this incredible exercise of American strength has paved the way for peace with a historic ceasefire agreement late Monday, and we call it the 12-day war. And we think it's over. I don't think they're going to be going back at each other. I don't think so.
The US president reiterated that Iran cannot continue its nuclear program.
Not only have we dealt decisively with the critical threat of Iran's nuclear program, which was what I wanted. I said, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I've said that for 15 years, long before I decided to do the political thing.
And referring to increase in defense spending of NATO allies, US President said it is vital that additional defense spending should be spent on made in America military hardware because US, he says, has the best military hardware in the world.
It is vital that this additional money be spent on very serious military hardware, not bureaucracy, and hopefully that hardware is going to be made in America because we have the best hardware in the world. You saw that where 14 missiles were shot at us the other day. And they were very nice. They gave us warning. They said, we're going to shoot them. Is 1 o'clock okay? They said, it's fine. And everybody was emptied off the base, so they couldn't get hurt except for the gunners. They call them the gunners. And out of 14 high-end missiles that were shot at the base in Qatar, all 14, as you know, were shot down by our equipment.
Meanwhile, the fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran has brought some relief, but tensions do simmer beneath the surface. President Trump claims Iran's nuclear program is obliterated, yet American intel and other experts raise doubts. Meanwhile, Iran admits major damage but vows to speed up its nuclear efforts, cutting ties with UN atomic inspectors. Here's more.
Although the ceasefire between Israel and Iran after 12 days of intense aggression has brought much-needed relief to the world, a classified US intelligence report contradicted President Donald Trump's claim of total destruction. President Donald Trump, however, vehemently opposed the news reports and asserted on Wednesday that the US strikes resulted in total obliteration of Iran's nuclear capabilities and have pushed back the country's atomic program by decades.
I think basically decades, because I don't think they'll ever do it again. I just don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to take their oil, they're going to have some missiles, and they'll have some defense. I think they've had it. I mean, they just went through hell. I think they've had it. The last thing they want to do is enrich.
Kremlin has also responded to the US airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites. It said that the extent of the damage remains unclear and emphasized it is too early to accurately assess the full impact. Meanwhile, the Israeli military claimed that the strikes have set back Iran's nuclear program by years. Iran also confirmed the American strikes on its nuclear facilities and acknowledged considerable destruction on ground. In response to the attacks, Speaker of Iran's parliament, Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf, announced on Wednesday that the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran will suspend its cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. He further stated that Iran's nuclear program will now proceed at a faster pace.
Despite the recent attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, the International Atomic Energy Agency has not condemned them, not even superficially. It has undermined its international credibility, and for this reason, the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran is suspending its cooperation with the agency until the security of its nuclear facilities is guaranteed and Iran's peaceful nuclear program will proceed at a faster pace.
The UN nuclear watchdog, however, voiced concern. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi said its top priority is regaining access for inspectors to Iran's nuclear facilities in order to assess the damage from the strikes and verify Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium.
This is number one priority, like you say. We know that, I had received a letter from the Iranian foreign minister saying that they had taken protective measures already. They did not get into details into what that meant, but clearly that was the implicit meaning of that. So we can imagine that this material is there.
With Iran vowing to accelerate its nuclear efforts and oversight now in question, the region faces heightened uncertainty and the world watches closely for what comes next. With Rabindra Chauhan, Amit Mukherjee for DD India.
And following ceasefire with Israel, Iranian authorities on Wednesday announced the gradual lifting of internet restrictions. The Revolutionary Guard Cybersecurity Command stated via state media that communication network is progressively returning to normal. Iran's Minister of Communications and Information Technology, Sattar Hashmi, posted on social media, and I quote, "With the normalization of conditions, the state of communication access has returned to its previous conditions." In other news, in Kenya, at least 10 people were hospitalized with gunshot injuries during rallies on Wednesday to mark one-year anniversary of protest against an anti-tax bill. Earlier in the day, thousands of people took to streets to commemorate demonstrations last year that left at least 60 people dead and culminated in storming of the National Parliament. The recent outrage has reignited following the recent death of 31-year-old blogger and teacher Albert Ojwang in police custody. In Bangladesh, the International Crimes Tribunal has removed state defense lawyer for Hasina over conflict of interest. Lawyer Aminul Ghani Titu was state-appointed defense counsel for former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in contempt of court case citing a conflict of interest and concerns over judicial ethics. Supreme Court lawyer Amir Hossain has been appointed as the new state defense counsel. The World Bank on Wednesday approved $250 million to support Lebanon's post-war rebuilding efforts and $146 million grant to restore Syria's electricity infrastructure. The Executive Board of the World Bank has approved two separate programs with $146 million in funding going to Syria and $250 million allocated to Lebanon to repair and re-establish lifeline services, as well as carry out sustainable management of rubble in conflict-affected areas. The World Bank informed this in a statement. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam welcomed the decision, calling the project a key step in reconstruction by responding to damage to critical infrastructure and essential services in the war-affected areas. Now the latest on the wildfires that have ravaged the Greek island of Chios. Greek firefighters struggled on Wednesday to contain a wildfire that has devastated and destroyed more than 4,000 hectares of land on the island over the past 4 days. Chios is the northern agency is Greece's fifth largest island. It's currently facing 5 separate fire outbreaks. The fire service said around 400 firefighters, 85 vehicles, 4 water bombers and several helicopters had been deployed with sporadic outbreaks, remaining mainly in the south of the island. Greece has become particularly vulnerable in recent years to fires in summer fueled by strong winds, drought and high temperatures linked to climate change. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has reached Qingdao in China to attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Defence Ministers Meet. It is the first high-level visit by an Indian minister to China since May of 2020. Rajnath Singh is looking forward to presenting India's vision for global peace and security, calling for joint efforts to eliminate terrorism during 2-day Shanghai Cooperation Organization meet. Let's now turn to other stories making news around the world. Thousands gathered at the Cusco's major archaeological site of Sacsayhuaman in Peru to celebrate the Inca tradition of paying homage to the sun god Inti. Inti Raymi festival, considered a key cultural attraction in Peru, has been central to Cusco's identity since its modern revival in 1944. Britain's Prince William celebrated the finalists of Earthshot Prize at an event in London, highlighting innovations in environmental technologies. Earthshot Prize, launched in 2020, offers multi-million-pound awards aimed at funding solutions to global sustainability challenges. Some of the Venice landmarks, including Arsenal, are among the venues booked for Bezos and Sanchez wedding. Amazon founder Bezos and media personality Sanchez are set to tie the knot in Venice from June 24 to 26th, marking one of the most high-profile weddings of the year. In a major move to reduce examination stress, Central Board of Secondary Education (CBSE) has announced 2 board exams for class 10th students starting from 2026 academic year. As per the new policy, students can appear twice in the year, once for the main exam and once for the improvement if needed. The first exam will be mandatory and only students who pass in at least 3 core subjects will be eligible for the second attempt. This change aligns with National Education Policy 2020, aiming to make assessments more flexible, student-friendly and less high stakes.
Contained in para 4.37 of the National Education Policy, wherein it was mandated that the board should conduct 2 board exams, one for the main exam and the second for improvement if so desired. The board has finally formulated a scheme after due consultation with all the stakeholders, whereby a complete scheme for 2 board exams has been formulated and shared today in the form of a press release and a circular which will be issued to all the schools for their education, and also to make the students and the parents aware about the rubrics of the new proposal. In this particular scheme, children may appear in the first board exams starting around the middle of February, and the second board exams will be conducted in the month of May.
Still to come on DD India Newshour. We'll talk about the outcome of the NATO summit at The Hague.
Goa, an adventure paradise like none other. From lush forests to rugged hills, from pristine ocean beach stretches to stunning lakes, there is something to explore in every corner of the state. And some adventures are wilder than others. Watch postcards from Goa on National Geographic.
You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Shubhanshu Ghosh. Our top stories. Captain Subhanshu Shukla creates history, becomes second Indian in space, steers the Axiom-4 mission to International Space Station. Donald Trump reiterates US strikes obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities, dismisses reports casting doubts over the impact of these strikes. NATO allies agree to 5% defense spending target. Trump calls the Hague summit a monumental success for the US, says America will equip members with the best ammunition. NATO leaders on Wednesday backed the big increase in the defense spending that US President Donald Trump had demanded and reinstated their commitment to defend each other from attacks. While Trump got what he wanted at the brief summit tailor-made for him, his NATO allies will be relieved that he continues to be committed to the fundamental principle of collective defense. NATO allies also reaffirmed their enduring support for Ukraine. DD India's Raghav Kumar Jha has more.
NATO leaders committed Wednesday to spend 5% of annual output on defense by 2035. Seen as vital to counter the threat from Russia and keep US President Donald Trump engaged with the alliance. In a joint statement, the 32 members of the alliance said, allies commit to invest 5% of GDP annually on core defense requirements as well as defense and security-related spending by 2035. As per the agreement, NATO members would spend 3.5% of GDP on core defense, such as troops and weapons, and 1.5% on broader defense-related measures such as cybersecurity, protecting pipelines, and adapting roads and bridges to handle heavy military vehicles. French President Emmanuel Macron told reporters that Europe will spend more on defense to be better equipped to face the Russian threat.
We are doing all of this, let me remind you, and put this back in the middle of discussions, because there is a Russian threat. And this is why we are all rearming ourselves, because this threat is at our borders.
US President Donald Trump hailed NATO's summit as a big success.
This was a tremendous summit, and I enjoyed it very much. And thank you. I stayed through every one of those speeches. Everyone.
The NATO allies stressed their unwavering commitment to mutual defense, a founding principle of the alliance that US President Donald Trump had appeared to question. The leaders in the summit declaration said, "We reaffirm our ironclad commitment to collective defense as enshrined in Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, that an attack on one is an attack on all." Hosting the meeting, NATO chief Mark Rutte asserted that it is a winning combination for North America and Europe and the most powerful defense alliance in world history.
We stand together, united in NATO, the most powerful defensive alliance in world history. History has shown that North America and Europe working together is a winning combination.
NATO allies declared Russia as a long-term threat to Euro-Atlantic security and reaffirmed their enduring support for Ukraine. On the other hand, the Kremlin accused NATO of being on the path of rampant militarization and portraying Russia as a fiend of hell in order to justify its big increase in defense spending. Raghav Kumar Jha's report for DD India.
Meanwhile, on the sidelines of the NATO summit in The Hague, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with US President Donald Trump on Wednesday for a long and substantive discussion focused on potential ceasefire in Ukraine. Though not invited to summit's main working session, Zelensky held talks with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and European leaders including Macron, Meloni, Merz, Starmer. Rutte reaffirmed NATO's support to Ukraine, while Zelensky expressed gratitude for continuing air defense aid, calling the summit a show of strong backing. And to decode the outcome of the NATO summit, joining me is Ambassador Prakash Srivastava, former senior diplomat, former Indian ambassador to Iran and distinguished fellow VIF. Good evening and welcome, Ambassador Srivastava, to DD India. How well has the NATO summit articulated the threats outside and the existing differences within the grouping vis-a-vis the United States?
NATO summit has agreed to hike up the defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. That does not necessarily answer the question whether there's a unity of purpose. And that is what has been plaguing NATO. There was a rift in the transatlantic alliance, which has been papered over for the time being. And the NATO allies, the European allies of US, have announced an increase in defense spending as demanded by President Trump. But it raises many questions. Increase in defense spending at a time when the global economy is slowing down and when there's pressure or competition for resources from other agenda like climate change. Was it really required? And whether this will be enough to answer the security needs, and does it answer the US security needs? Because unlike European countries whose focus remains Europe, America has global interests and global reach, and its biggest challenge comes from China, which is not part of NATO's mandate. So I think the summit outcome may be satisfying to a few countries, but they don't really answer the questions which the alliance is going to face and more than anyone else, which the US is going to face in next 5 years.
Right, Ambassador Srivastav, you're flagging pertinent issues, and I want to take it a little further. What does it then say about the dynamics, the real dynamics within the NATO grouping? And may I also bring your attention to what has also been highlighted by a lot of media persons about a certain language of flattery that the NATO leadership used for President Donald Trump, almost really trying to address his concerns as the priority for the grouping.
That goes back to NATO leaders' reading of US president. They want to flatter him to keep America in. If you recall the historic origins of NATO, as the saying went, NATO was conceived to keep Russia out, to keep Germany down, and to keep US in. Now that Germany has risen, it was reunited, and today, I mean, in the last 6 months, one of the biggest change which has come over is the German commitment to massive increase in its defense spending. Just to put things in perspective, Germany's defense budget as of now, 95 billion euro, outstrips India's defense budget by something like 40% at least. And India has, much bigger and more complex security threats. And to increase that from, the current 2.4% of GDP to 3.4% by 2030 and 5% by 2035 is going to put a lot of strain on that economy. And of course, it will fundamentally change the nature of NATO. One of the NATO's tenet, which I repeated, was to keep Germany down. Today, Germany has risen, and it is going to rise again.
Right. And what does the outcome of the summit mean for the United States President? And one is, of course, raising the budget to 5% that President Donald Trump had been demanding. But also he makes clear in his address where the military equipment and infrastructure is likely to come from. Made in America, he says.
That is true. Last year, European Commission passed a policy paper, adopted a policy paper, which said that not only EU has to increase its defense spending, it has to be more self-reliant, which means to go it alone. And what America is demanding is that not only you increase defense spending, but you buy more from America. So I think the two will, there's still enough convergence of interests. The two will go together because Europe realizes they can't go it alone.
And the developments in Iran, sir, also echoed at The Hague. NATO chief endorsed American action in Iran. Trump rejected any doubts, aspersions over the real impact of US strikes on Iran. And Iran, meanwhile, is moving to suspend cooperation with the UN Atomic Agency watchdog. How do you see the situation in Iran is likely to evolve from here on?
Let me first make a small comment about where you began the question. There's a lot of speculation whether the US strike succeeded in taking out the Iranian nuclear capacity. Now, the underlying assumption is that Iran was moving towards weaponization. This raises two questions. Is that correct? You go back to 2002 debate on Iraq, and Colin Powell, the US US Secretary of State, he raised an ampule and supposedly containing some WMD material. And after a costly war and almost a decade of occupation, American forces could not unearth any WMD program. So, underlying assumption that Iran was moving towards weaponization, that itself can be questioned. Second is that even assuming that assumption was correct, there were less costly options to constrain Iran's nuclear program, and that is what Iran had agreed to. Now, this so-called finding or leak from Pentagon should not become an argument for restarting a war in a region which has just undergone a very deadly confrontation.
On that note, Ambassador Dinkar Prakash Srivastav, thank you very much for joining us on DD India and sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
Let's now take a look at other stories making news today. Scientists from Forest Research Institute, Dehradun, have conducted a health checkup of the sacred Mahabodhi tree at the Mahabodhi temple at Bodh Gaya in the Indian state of Bihar. The assessment confirmed that the revered tree is in excellent health, with only minor mealybug infestation observed on a few small branches, a condition commonly seen with the onset of the monsoon. Preparations are in full swing for world-famous Lord Jagannath Rath Yatra, set to take place in Puri, Odisha on June 27th. Thousands of devotees from across India and abroad are expected to gather for the annual procession of Lord Jagannath, Lord Balbhadra and Devi Subhadra. In a major crackdown on wildlife trafficking, forest officials in the Indian city of Hyderabad have apprehended state-level gang involved in illegal transport of elephant ivory. Officials seized over 6 kilograms of ivory valued at approximately 3 crore rupees in international market. The accused have been booked under the provisions of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Still to come on DD India Newshour. India's Home Minister Amit Shah launches a book, The Emergency Diaries, that chronicles Prime Minister Modi's experiences during the emergency. The Indian junior men's hockey team beats Australia in the Four Nations tournament. And Inter Milan and River Plate tie round of 16 spot in ongoing FIFA Club World Cup.
A land filled with surprises. In the mighty force of your waters, you hold the deepest secrets that take us back in time. When it's said that the gods walk this land, this is where we feel the warmth of your faces. See hands that mold life. While embracing change, you grow. In you is the land that gives, creates, nurtures, grows, and builds. It's all in you. Come, experience Chhattisgarh.
You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. June 25th, 1975, a date carved in India's democratic history as one of its darkest hours. Today, the nation observes 50 years since the imposition of the emergency, marked by widespread suppression of civil liberties. The period remains a cautionary tale for generations. Our next report by Ragini Sudhir Chaure revisits the chapter, the latest political reaction surrounding its anniversary.
It was the midnight of June 25, 1975, that then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi declared a state of emergency across India. For the next 21 months, the constitution was weaponized, dissent crushed, press censored, and voices silenced. 50 years later, the Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, passed a resolution condemning what it called a Samvidhan Hatya Divas, which translates into a day to commemorate the murder of Constitution. A 2-minute silence was observed in the memory of those who suffered during the period. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a tweet on social media platform X, said, and I quote, The people of India mark this day as Samvidhan Hatya Divas. On this day, the values enshrined in the Indian constitution were set aside, fundamental rights were suspended, press freedom was extinguished, and several political leaders, social workers, students, and ordinary citizens were jailed. It was as if the Congress government in power at that time placed democracy under arrest. Home Minister Amit Shah, while launching the Emergency Diaries, a book that chronicles Prime Minister Modi's personal experiences during those years, called the emergency an era of injustice.
हमारे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने 25 तारीख का ये दिन संविधान हत्या दिन के रूप में मनाने का सरकारी निर्णय किया है। जिस प्रकार से आपातकाल में देश को एक जेल खाना बनाकर रख दिया था, देश की आत्मा को मूंगा कर रख दिया गया था, न्यायालय के कान को बहरा कर रख दिया गया था, लिखने वालों की कलम से स्याही ही निकाल दी गई थी।
The book relies on first-hand accounts and archival material, offering a glimpse into how those turbulent years shaped Narendra Modi's political journey. Meanwhile, Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav said the cabinet's tribute was a gesture to honor the resilience of those who stood up against the then government's move of imposing emergency.
The Union Cabinet, chaired by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, resolved to commemorate and honor the sacrifices of countless individuals who valiantly resisted the emergency and its attempt at subversion of the spirit of Indian Constitution. A subversion which began in 1974 with a heavy-handed attempt at crushing the Navnirman Andolan and Sampurn Kranti Abhiyan. To mark the occasion, a 2-minute silence was observed in today's meeting of the Union Cabinet as a tribute to those whose constitutionally guaranteed democratic rights were taken away.
Meanwhile, External Affairs Minister Dr. S.J. Shankar has also called the painful chapter of independent India's history on the social media post X. He said, and I quote, "Institutions were undermined, rights were suspended, and accountability was set aside. It also remains a powerful reminder of our collective duty to safeguard constitutional values and uphold the resilience of Indian democracy." As India looks back on that chapter, the memories of the emergency are still fresh. It continues to be a reminder that in a democracy, the voice of the people always reigns supreme. Ragini Sudhir Chore for DD India.
The emergency of June 1975 is regarded as one of the darkest periods in India's democratic history, marked by constitutional changes, loss of fundamental rights, suppression of personal freedoms and press censorship. Forced sterilizations and widespread repression left lasting scars on the nation's collective memory. Here's more.
Emergency declared on the night of June 25-26 in 1975 is remembered as a dark chapter in Indian democracy. The constitution was misused to suppress dissent, and efforts were made to reshape it to enable authoritarian rule. Citizens were stripped of their fundamental rights, freedom of speech was denied, and the press was censored. The public had access only to the information that Indira Gandhi's government approved and allowed to be published. All dissenting leaders, along with activists, journalists, and academicians who raised their voices against the emergency, were arrested. The harshness of the period continues to serve as a grim reminder of the events that unfolded. Following the declaration of emergency, the government arrested key opposition leaders under laws like under Maintenance of Internal Security Act, Defense of Indian Rules. Prominent figures including Morarji Desai, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Lal Krishna Advani, George Fernandez, Jayaprakash Narayan, and even Congress leader Chandrasekhar were jailed and held at undisclosed locations. A law was enacted denying arrested individuals the right to court hearings or bail. Their families and associates were kept uninformed. Visits were heavily monitored by intelligence officials, and the communication was censored too. At the onset of emergency, Articles 14, 21, and 22 of the Constitution were suspended. This move took away the guarantees of equality before the law, protection of life and property, and the right to be presented before a court within 24 hours of arrest. In January 1976, Article 19 was also suspended, revoking freedom of speech, publication, association, and assembly. With the emergency, strict censorship was clamped down on newspapers and new laws were introduced. All four major news agencies, PTI, UNI, Hindustan Samachar, and Samachar Bharati, were merged into a single news agency, and a press code of conduct was introduced. Editors were arrested for dissent. The film Kissa Kursi Ka was seized, singer Kishore Kumar was blacklisted, and the film Andhi was also banned. During the emergency, police brutality and repression were widespread, with detainees facing inhuman treatment. Even the lawyers and judges were targeted. A notorious aspect of emergency was the forced involvement of teachers and low level staff in implementing family planning measures. Forced sterilizations and oppressive measures, disguised as family planning and beautification, led to widespread abuse of government power and severe hardship for ordinary people. In the 1971 elections, Indira Gandhi defeated Raj Narayan from the Raebareli seat, who later challenged her victory, citing misuse of government resources. In 1975, the Allahabad High Court invalidated her election and barred her from contesting elections for next 6 years. The Supreme Court upheld this but allowed her to remain the Prime Minister, attend Lok Sabha sessions, though without voting rights. Facing widespread public anger over unemployment, inflation, and corruption, and with the opposition demanding a resignation, Indira Gandhi's position was further weakened by the Allahabad High Court verdict of continuing as Prime Minister. To cling to power, she imposed the emergency, marking a dark chapter in Indian democracy. The emergency, which began at midnight on June 25, lasted until March 21, 1977. This 21-month-long period was a dictatorial phase in India's democratic history that deeply affected the lives of ordinary citizens. However, the decision to impose the emergency proved disastrous for the Congress party. In 1977, the elections that followed, Congress faced a major defeat, and for the first time, a non-Congress government led by Morarji Desai came to power. Bureau Report, DD India.
In other developments, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday chaired the 48th meeting of Pragati, ICT or tech-enabled multimodal platform. During the meeting, PM reviewed critical infrastructure projects across mines, railways and water resources sectors, emphasizing timely execution, inter-agency coordination and prompt issue resolution. These projects are central to India's economic growth, infrastructure development and public welfare and reflect the government's ongoing commitment to efficient, transparent governance. You're watching DD India Newshour. Time now for all the action from the world of sports. The Indian junior men's hockey team defeated Australia 2-1 in the battle for third place at the ongoing Four Nations tournament on Wednesday. Australian captain Toby Mullen had given Australia the lead in the second half. Rohit provided equaliser for India before Ajit Yadav's fourth quarter goal sealed the win. The win marks the end of India's campaign in Four Nations tournament. In the pool stage, India began with loss to host Germany, bounced back with a victory against Australia and then endured a 1-5 defeat against Spain. Rajasthan is set to host the 5th edition of Khelo India University Games in November. The Purnima University and Rajasthan University will jointly host the Khelo India University Games 2025 in Jaipur. More than 4,000 athletes from more than 200 universities are expected to participate in the multi-sport games. Like previous editions, there will be at least 20 disciplines of the Khelo India University Games program. Chandigarh University had won the team championship at the 2024 edition, which was co-hosted by Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Sikkim, Nagaland and Tripura. In Club World Cup, Inter Milan will face River Plate Al Lumen Field in Seattle on Thursday. Inter Milan have one win and a draw so far in the competition. They are in second place in Group E, tied in 4 points with River Plate. The winner of this game will go to the top of the group and move closer to the last 16 stage. In another crucial encounter, Borussia Dortmund will face off against Ulsan HT. A win for Dortmund will put them into round of 16, while a loss could see them out of the tournament altogether. Ulsan's campaign has already ended. Back-to-back losses, they will look to finish on a high note with the win. Sweden's women's national team have started preparing for their friendly match against Norway ahead of European Football Championship. The 14th edition of the Women's Euro event will be taking place in Switzerland this year from July 2nd. Sweden's coach Peter Gerhardsson said that he is expecting the tournament to be a very quality event. Gerhardsson stated that his focus was on friendly against Norway and then their first match of the Euros against Denmark. That's all in this edition of DD India Newshour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan this QR code on your screen and download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Newshour. Namaskar.
Meghalaya, the abode of clouds. A land so enchanting. It makes time stand still. With a distinctive and ethnic culture. And vibrant tribal folklore. Filled with the goodness of nature. Every day here is an adventure. Home to music, passion, and to hopes and ambitions. Welcome to the magical land of Meghalaya.
Near the heart of India, a land filled with surprises. In the mighty force of your waters, you hold the deepest secrets that take us back in time. When it's said that the gods walk this land, this is where we feel the warmth of your faces. See hands that mold life. While embracing change, you grow. In you is the land that gives, creates, nurtures, grows, and builds. It's all in you. Come, experience Chhattisgarh.
Welcome to Kumarakod, Kerala, God's own country.